Why do you coach? Welcome to the Nick Anthony Show. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Nick.
Hey, Nick. How you doing today?
I'm good, Anthony. I'm good.
Good.
I don't know why I do this, but I torture myself in the car listening to sports talk radio.
Especially here.
Yeah. Yes. And then I get myself worked up, and I'm thinking, why am I continuing to listen to this? But I know they're trying to provoke, I guess, emotion or entertainment or whatever, but God, I get so frustrated. And not everyone, but this morning I got so worked up. And then I had to, when I got out of the car before we came in, I had to calm myself down. So anyway, I love some of them, but yeah, it drove me crazy today. So how are you?
I'm okay. How do you say you're from Philadelphia without?
I know, that's true. Yeah.
So I'm good, actually. I swam in the Schuylkill last night. So I know that sounds crazy.
It is crazy.
To you, but it is just so wonderful to get into open water, right? It's just such a peaceful thing. People talk about running and, that kind of stuff. I can't run because of my knees and I'm just not a runner anyway. But there's a huge difference between swimming in a pool and swimming in open water. And so swimming it's this group called French Creek Racing. There's a bunch of triathletes. They've got kayaks out there and everything. It's not in Philly, right? It's the suburbs.
Yeah.
But so it's upstream. So the water's clean. They monitor water. They monitor flow, all that kind of stuff.
Schuylkill and water clean usually don't go together.
I know, but it's far enough up that it is. And but it's just so relaxing. And you would not believe how clean it is up there. I mean, there's times when it's like 12 feet deep, right? And you can see the bottom. Right. And I think
that's surprising.
And I swam there, 100 times or whatever. And I think I've seen toucans the whole time.
Wow.
And so, but it's just,
How far do you go? How long do you go?
Oh, last night lightning came, so I got cut short. So I did a little bit more than a mile was all. But I typically go, couple few. But yeah.
Nice. And that takes you 5 minutes.
That's not 5 minutes, but yeah. But it's but there's just something about not having to follow a black line, not dealing with a lot of crowds, just swimming in nature.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just a wonderful, relaxing thing. So I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good. So today's topic, vulnerability, and we'll discuss the segment of vulnerability a little bit.
Right.
Mostly I think we're going to talk about vulnerability to learn, really, and
right.
Maybe openness to learn. And one thing that happened at Drexel that I think is a really cool story to show this. I don't think there was no plan behind it. There was definitely thought behind it, but there wasn't a plan. So we had a head coach who just took over a program late in the season, or not in the season, but late timing, where you could, they were really figuring out. Coach was really young, almost to the, there was almost co-coaching with the timing of it, and I was working with them, and what was really surprising for me was after one of their, third practice, I walked in on a meeting, and the coaches, the two of them, had the seniors, and I sat in the back and listened, and they were asking them, "How's it going? How are we doing?" This is because this was their first shot at running, being in charge. Yeah, being in charge, and I remember thinking, wow, that's pretty cool that they're young, and yet they allowed themselves the vulnerability to just learn and get feedback from these seniors, and instead of letting insecurity take over and tightening up and almost like, I got to figure this out, I got to know what I'm doing, that there was this just let go and ask them, and there was this honest dialogue back and forth, which lends itself to trust and belief and obviously just the nature of growing and learning and figuring out and taking feedback to allow them to be better. So we're gonna we'll get into a lot of what vulnerability to learn, and different avenues. But I just thought that story to me just always resonated, that event, and it wasn't too long ago, but it was just impressive, I think, especially for their experience level.
Right. No, that's amazing, and that's really why we're talking about vulnerability today, is because it's really an impediment to learning. Right? And you can't have a strong E and not be vulnerable. That's just one of the characteristics that you have to learn, is that you have to be vulnerable. You have to be open. And it's also, it's really hard. We talked about the 4 stages of competence a couple shows ago. If you're not open to learning, you're never going to be open to somebody telling you you have room for improvement, right? One of the things that you talked about in that show was you have to have somebody tell you sometimes, right? But you still have to be open to that, and you have to allow yourself to hear, like, wait a second, I have a lot more to learn, a lot more area to grow in this area. I think that's an impressive story, and you didn't tell me that when we were prepping, so it's even more impressive that you had that, and you kind of held it.
I like to throw a curveball.
Well,
like they do to me.
Yeah. Sometimes my curveballs aren't on purpose, but
yes. In the dirt. Go ahead.
or right now, up in your jaw. Yeah. But anyway, but that's really an impressive story, because it shows the security that those guys had in themselves. Like they give them credit for thinking through it and calling seniors in as opposed to like the whole team, right? So they went after people who were supposed to be leaders on the team and had more experience and all that kind of stuff, but they were secure in themselves. And so they opened themselves up to learning. And I think today, if I just take a pause just for a second, the name of this episode is Vulnerability. And there's this woman, what's her name?
Brene Brown.
Brene Brown, thank you. Who's made she's almost made a living in talking about vulnerability. Yeah. And it's really important for relationships and getting along with people and all that kind of, it's in so many different ways. You have to open your up to be vulnerable. But as you said, today's show is really about the vulnerability you need to have in order to learn, right? It's not all the other stuff, right? But I think we also talked about words and word choice in episode 4, I think, right? Word choice. And so, vulnerability has some connotations with it because it's such a used word nowadays. And it's almost makes you cringe a little bit and like get a little defensive, like, oh wait, I gotta be vulnerable. And it's dangerous. And I believe in vulnerability. I believe it's critically important. And I think we might use the word openness today, because it's really about being open to learning. And so those guys had to be secure enough in what they do.
Naive enough. No, I'm kidding. We're naive enough, but go ahead. I'm kidding.
Well, maybe there was some of that, but the fact that they had seniors in there only.
I don't want to diminish what they did. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that they kept doing it while you were in the room, like, you were unannounced, you just floated in?
I was around a lot more because of how late in the season, how late in the year it happened. But yes, right. I was just around.
Yeah, so total credit to them to have the confidence to do that. They know, like, no matter what comes out of this, I'm still me. I'm still whatever sport it is. I still know my sport. Whatever. Right? All that kind of stuff. So hats off to them to being open enough to allow themselves to be, and secure enough to allow themselves to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And I don't know. Can I? Yeah. So I have a story of like the opposite, and it's not a sports story though, right?
Okay. Oh boy.
But So no, it goes back to what
Everyone hit fast forward. No, I'm just kidding.
it's not that long of a story.
I'm
Right?
kidding. Okay.
So I had this boss, or it was, he ran the national sales organization, right? And I hope he doesn't watch the show, but because he'll know who he is, right? And I had an area in a region and that kind of stuff. And the company was just had these challenges with the sales organization on how we were dealing with big giant clients and all that kind of stuff. It was just very complex. And I discovered this book, and actually I don't even think it's in print anymore. It's a book called The Quadrant Solution. But I found this book. It's like, oh, this is like the keys to the kit. Like if we followed the things and suggestions, ideas in this book, we'd solve all these problems. And so again, he's my boss and all those kinds of things. And I brought him this book. He's like, we don't need a book. I don't have time to read anyway. I don't have time. I never read. I don't have time to read. On and on and on. And we don't need a book. We're all really experienced here. I can figure it out. It's like, oh my gosh. Guess what? Well, we never figured it out as an organization. It remained a problem for years until the whole organization changed dramatically, right? And so he just wasn't open to learning new things that could have, actually made the company money, made him more money, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just like these things are just like, wait, just be open. And I know I'm a subordinate. I know I'm underneath you. I know it's a book. Well, all that stuff.
I think that lends itself to
right.
You were open. You were vulnerable, right? You went to him or her. I think it was him, as being vulnerable. And so if we, and I'm joking, but I do think I love your business references because I think they do help explain. And one of the things we want to do is bring business principles and concepts into coaching and adapt them. But I think it's important in the sports, in coaching world where what's the vulnerability of the player to learn.
Yeah.
Right. And then the coach's ability, as we go back to the 4 stages of competency, the coach pushing them or recognizing, are they vulnerable? And if they aren't, why aren't they?
Right.
And then lends itself to things. So in your situation, you were vulnerable enough to present something, right? So, but then, the manager, the coach, wasn't vulnerable enough to listen to it, right? And not that he has to agree with it, et cetera, but if you just shut it down, you're not open. You don't have the openness to learn it. So, I mean, I guess talk through a little bit about the end, the coach and the player and the player's vulnerability to learn and how you recognize that or how you encourage that.
Right. And, some of this is, it's just my opinion and observations, right? We talked about in the last episode, not a lot of scientific studies, but
correct.
Certainly I don't think anybody would argue that kids today are different than they were in the past and you have to approach them differently and all. But I really, as a coach, you need to make your kids coachable sometimes. And one of the ways to make them coachable is to really focus on, are they open to learning? Are they vulnerable enough? Do they feel secure enough to learn? And one of the things you have to do is create trust.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to create trust. I mean, imagine, I'm going to go back to the story that you told, and that is those senior players, they might have had some grousing to make about their coaches, but oh my gosh, they really listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a player now, right? They really listen to me. I'm going to trust them with the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to, they asked for my help. Maybe now I'm going to ask for their help. So those coaches, as young and inexperienced as they were and new, right, they created trust. And so assuming they listened, because we've all had bosses or situations or coaches that tell me what you really think, and they're not really listening.
Yeah.
They're just looking for confirmation for their idea. So it sounds like in this situation, your coaches were really listening, right, to what ideas were coming. So the same thing as a coach player, if you really want that player to listen to you, you've got to create that trust. And there's lots of ways to do it. But first you have to understand where they're coming from, right? We've all seen these, silly clips on Instagram or whatever, where a teacher's yelling at a kid. They don't really understands the kid's circumstances, like maybe they didn't eat that day, or maybe, and it happens all the time. It's a horrible problem, right? I'm not, but we, but maybe they didn't eat that day.
Yeah.
Maybe they had to take their grandparents somewhere. Maybe they had to do something, and maybe they're late for practice for something that you don't know. You can't just as a coach yell at them and think that they're going to feel as if you have their best interests at heart.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to find ways to make them secure enough that you believe in them, right? So I almost always, when I'm talking to kids about stroke work or even, a water polo or whatever, when I'm introducing new things to them and they're in that first stage of like, they don't even know what they don't know of confidence, is that I always make sure that they know that I believe that they can do it,
mm-hmm.
that I'm expecting them to do it the first time.
Yep.
Right. And so just telling a kid that, I found really like they can just relax, become more vulnerable, and then they try it.
Yeah.
And then I find encouraging words, and I don't just say, do this, this, and this, and pile on. I say, this part was really good, right? You did this part right. And next time work on this, on the next,
Well, it's an emotional, right? I mean, it's an emotional skill. It's an E for coaches, in that case, you, to recognize where why students, kids, players may not be vulnerable to learn, right? And so the two that come to mind from the player standpoint would be, Steph Curry, when Steve Kerr took over for Mark Jackson, Golden State, he put Steph Curry off the ball, right? He was in a lot of pick and rolls, and they've gone back to it. I don't want to act like they don't do some of those things, but they started getting Steph off the ball and coming off screens and doing a lot more of that. Well, that's Steph having to be vulnerable to learn from a new coach, right? And then similar, which I mentioned before, and to me the ultimate one was just Jordan and being vulnerable to learn. The triangle offense when Phil Jackson came in. And I do think in both cases, Phil Jackson, Steve Kerr have the emotional skill to recognize that their star players may not be vulnerable to learn, and had to figure out ways to get them to want to learn, or to be open to learn something new, right? And so I think it takes both vulnerability, and I think within both situations, to the word you just used, it was clear they gained the trust of their star player. I don't know exactly how they did it.
That's what I was going to ask you.
I think I think that would be an interesting study, but I think both have the emotional skills to figure out how they're going to reach their star player. Whether maybe it was Steve Kerr adding the cultural value of joy, which is a touching point for Steph. I mean, he describes Steph as no one plays basketball with more joy than Steph, right?
So that's something that Steve Kerr did?
Yes.
He brought in joy.
Yes.
Tell me something I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, and as one of their core values is joy. And I think that met Steph where he was. And I think that'll be a story. I mean, that'll be a show in itself, just meeting players where they are.
But that's a great example, though. I don't want.
No,
it's a great example of creating trust. Mm-hmm. If one of your core values is joy, and you tell everybody that, it's just like, oh, this guy's not about the bottom line. He's not about just the wins and losses. He's not, he's not about, did I execute my VTech down to the, nano inch or whatever, right? But cares about whether I'm happy or not.
Yeah. I promise to the listeners that I'm not going to just talk about Steph Curry, Steve Kerr, and Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson for the rest of.
You're promising right now?
Well, can I promise?
Yeah.
Let's cross my fingers.
You could promise, but I think that's a great example. And I did not know that Steve Kerr did that.
Yeah.
And so that's a great example. Even at the professional level, you have to, as a coach, to get change, right? You have to get them open enough to learn, and get them open enough to learn. They have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
They make them vulnerable. They've got to trust you.
Well, and I think at the pro level, it's magnified with coaches can learn even more from their players
in some cases.
in some cases. So,
Right.
I mean, think about, Philadelphia. I mean, the ultimate example in Philly is Philly. The Philly special is Doug Peterson asking, what do we want to run? What do you want to run? And Nick Foles saying, Philly.
Right.
And that just being open and vulnerable to, let's see what you have to say. And that happens a lot, I think, more at high level college, but definitely at the pros. I mean, I don't know, again, I'm going to say Steve Kerr, but you can watch games where a player is drawing a play
Right.
in the huddle. And that's just amazing to me that he's willing to learn, but he's willing to let somebody who may know better in the moment, in this case, in the moment, take over almost what you'd think a head coaching would do. So, and not just an assistant, we're talking about a player. So that, I just think that's such a skill, such an emotional skill, such an E, that to be open to learn.
Right.
We'll be right back to the Nick Anthony Show.
Today's show is brought to you by the free film available on YouTube, A Dream Plus a Plan. Learn what it takes to accomplish your dream, whatever your dream is. Go to www.adreamplusaplan.com, adreamplusaplan.com.
Welcome back to the Nick Anthony Show.
So you just reminded me of a story, a childhood story. Mind if I tell it?
Yeah.
Monty Iwanaga was my
I spell that.
Yeah, I can.
You don't have to now. Okay.
Thank you, but I can't.
We'll put that up on the screen.
But
Go ahead.
but he was my high school swim coach.
Okay.
And the team had been undefeated in 4 years. And this is the first year, right? So great coach.
Yep.
Right. He was dominant. And I was one of the co-captains of the team that year. And this was pre-internet. So it was all the online apps that have everybody's swim times and all that kind of stuff. So I was obsessed with keeping that streak going.
Mm-hmm.
And as a captain, I felt like, back in the old days, right, there were all these local newspapers, and they published the results of swim meets. Mm-hmm. So I would drive around or get somebody else to drive me around town to town and pick up these local newspapers and gather people's times. And then on paper, right, I would, again, pre-computer, right, I would model everything out and figure out the ideal lineups, what events, who should swim. Because we had some really good swimmers that were multi-talented. They just weren't like one-stroke swimmers, right? And I would model it. And this guy, it was a 4-year reigning, and he had success long before that, right? He trusted me as a senior in high school to do the lineups.
So he was a fraud.
No. But talk about, it was a life lesson.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Me, right? It taught me how to be a boss. It taught me, so many things about life. And even helps me, I think, being a parent still to this day. Because there was one meet where the last meet of the season, 2 teams were meeting. They were both undefeated. So it was like, the scheduling worked out awesome, where it was the last dual meet of the season. And we ended up winning by 1 point based on my lineup, based on my events. And it was a wonderful life lesson by Monty Iwanaga.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Right.
That we talk, we're going to talk, throughout, a lot of our conversations about the impact a coach can have, right?
Right.
And the impact that he had, you just said, like, I learned all these life skills and be a better boss.
Yeah,
and
I
all these things
parents too.
Yeah, just think about that. And we talked about it before, and we're in our stories, but a lot of them come down to coaches making an impact,
right?
And it's these moments and these, in this case, the openness to show you that I don't know everything.
Well, I think he could have done the lineups himself. So I
hope so.
He could have. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I said that wrong. He could have, absolutely. But my point is, he was so secure in himself, and that he let me do it.
Yep.
Now, did he look at him and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, but I don't think that whole season he made a single change to my lineup. And so, but he was a role model. And I know this is what you're talking about, but imagine the internal strength he had to trust his streak, because it wasn't even my streak, right? That streak started before I was in high school, even, right? So trusting his streak to a kid, right? And just so that role model of vulnerability, that role model of being secure, that role model of listening and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I would do anything for him. It's just like he created so much loyalty out of that. If he has something to say to him, well, he was the kind of person anyway that was like all this. If he said something, you would listen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about
right.
You didn't say the word, but I think it's the other word is think about the confidence he gave you.
Right.
Just as a person,
right.
Yes, as a swimmer, but as a person that you could, I mean, let's say you didn't win that meet by 1 point or whatever.
Right.
He sounds like somebody who would...
86.5 to 85.5. There was even one race that was a tie. But go ahead.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, just think about that. Like if you had lost, let's say the score was flipped, he probably would have found a way to continue your confidence of...
Yes.
It wasn't the wins and losses. I mean, yes, that, validated that his belief in you and his, being open to you to do this and be successful with it. But the confidence it gave you, and I think again, the impact coaches can have on their players' confidence. I mean, I'm probably going to say it over and over and over again, but so much is just about confidence, and part of getting them confident is for them to see that you're still willing to learn. And I think it's, with teachers and classrooms and they made in high school, my wife teaches math in high school. There'll be students at certain levels where, that will show her that, she'll say are smarter than me, and she's pretty smart, and they'll show her a different way of doing that. And it is something I admire with her, is that she's open to learning still and having the confidence to teach, i.e. coach, whilst continuing to learn. And it like that's a skill. I mean, I think I want to be that way. And you question yourself, am I that way?
Right.
But when you see it, it's so important. And then again, so impactful. And
right.
Coaches are impacting students. I mean, kids, players, is Steph Curry as good as he is because of Steve Kerr and his, maybe it's arguable but I think that openness and vulnerability to learn, really has such impact.
Right. And it's I think it's an acceptance that we're all humans.
Yeah.
By being human, it means we're imperfect. Right. And so my high school coach allowed me to do that because he had so much security. He knew he was human. He knew I was human. And so coming from that perspective, you're going to make mistakes, right? Like I said, even the kids that I do some stuff with, right? It's just, I make sure they know that, no, it's not perfect yet, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. You're going to do it. I have faith in you as an athlete, or whatever, that you're going to get it done. You're going to be able to, because I have people over the house and we work on water polo stuff, and it just, and they can do it. They're just getting introduced to it the first time. So that's not a measure of who they are, but I think it's really, as a coach, you have to accept that you're human, and so therefore you're imperfect, and that leaves it open so you can learn, right? I learn from my kids all the time, right? It's amazing. It just...
Definitely.
And then, but then you have to teach them that they're imperfect. I mean, I don't want to get into too heavy of a stuff, but I think so many kids have so many issues because they're not taught it's okay to be imperfect.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right. And I'm not going to bring up all the stats and all the bad stuff, but just like if we teach our kids, it's like, you're not perfect, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Keep learning, keep growing, keep trying, keep whatever. I think the world would be a much happier place. And I think the coach has
Now you're getting into it.
I know.
We're going world.
I know, but it's true, right? It just all those social media, they talk about all that kind of stuff, right? But it's because what social media shows so much of is just perfection.
Oh yeah.
And it's not reality. I know everybody says that all the time, but I think the coach has a huge role in helping kids accept. We met episode 5 where we talked about coaching is hard.
Yeah.
This is one of the things, but this is why it's so impactful and so it's so important.
Yes,
that teaching them to be vulnerable, teaching them that it's okay to be imperfect, teaching them that that's a step in the process of whatever the process is. That's what it's all about.
Well, and it's them showing their vulnerability to learn, which teaches them. They're modeling that.
Right.
Can I switch? Not switch, but I guess take a fork in the road. So getting in your own way is a problem, I think, with coaches, and it hurts with confidence, right? And you don't have the confidence, and therefore you wind up going in places that you are doing things out of insecurity and open. Coaches that are open stay in a place where they don't. I mean, I think it allows them to not get in their own way and make these mistakes that they're detrimental to the team. And yes, it's not the only thing. I mean, you kind of say it. I say it like that it's the only thing, and it's not the only thing. There's so many different aspects, as we said, of how hard coaching is. But if you aren't open, you're going to be narrow. And I say this all the time, that a coach's greatest strength is their focus. Like they are so dialed in to their profession, to what they do and what they believe, and so I think that's an important point is the balance. Where do you balance the focus, and the belief? And because I think that is, like I said, coaches have this tunnel vision, and I've always just tried in my job to just open their tunnel vision just a little bit, so that they can learn something, be open to something new, not, see their blind spots a little bit. So I think it's that balance of being open, but also stick, because I do think it is a strength. Right. It's like if you teach man-to-man, concepts, and you're so dialed into that, and you do it so well, and you have the system down, right? I don't think you should necessarily sway from that. I think it's just allowing yourself to be open enough to think and to learn. Oh, maybe a zone once in a while, at times, is something.
Right.
You may dismiss it, right? Because you're not going to coach it as well. And when we get coaches on here, it's a topic that I would love to hear, is how do you balance new ideas? And some people can't. Some people can't balance so many different things, and they need to stay with it and with what they're doing. But you still have to be able to. You still have to be open to learn, and you still have to be willing to learn from your players, your kids, while being convicted to your beliefs. So I
agree, but I think it's an excuse to say that you can't do it, because one of my observations is, again, do I have a scientific study or a poll? No, but I think the worst coaches are the ones who think they know everything.
Definitely.
I mean, I have a story where I know kids' basketball's career, because they went to public high school and they were a run and gun, kind of more like the Warriors kind of like style. And this basketball coach that's not who we are. That's not how we play basketball at this school. We send it down to the post player and they do layups. And it was just like, wait, you've got all these kids, girls, they were girls, who can run and fling. They can all shoot 3-pointers. It's just like, and they didn't have a center, right? And he just girls left the sport because this guy thought he knew everything. He had a system. So there was no balance there at all. Mm-hmm. So, but I hear you, right? You don't want to be listening so much and learning so much to become wishy-washy, but there is a balance. You have to work on it. And to say that you can't, I challenge that. I challenge you as any coach, right, has to find the right balance of being vulnerable, being open to learning, taking on new data from new sources, right? It's not just all watching the other team's game film, because you're being open to learning when you're watching other teams' game film, right? It's not just that. You have to be open to take it from all kinds of different sources, including our show, for example, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, yes, I need to learn. And I still believe that make something out. I don't know, the triangle off or whatever, right? It's still the right thing to do with this personnel.
Yeah.
Right. But ask yourself, right, with this, especially if you're like a community, like if you're not you got to look at the players that you have and play to their strengths.
It's great. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. We had a coach, Bruiser Flint, one of the best people out there, was our coach for 15 years, men's basketball coach for 15 years or 16 years. And, over those years, I learned so much about, he is stubborn. He had a way. He had what he was recruiting to and how he wanted to play. But when I look back on his career, he inherited a team that did not have the type of players he recruits, or believes in, and he had to adapt and be open to, look, I guess I want to create this culture in how we do things, but I also want to win some games along the way. and he, that first couple of years, we played faster. We shot threes. We did some things, and it's fascinating that he was open to that. And because he is so, this is the way basketball is played, and this is the way I teach it. And, I think to the point where it was, at mundane at times, like, wow, we're running the same set. We're doing this.
3 to 4 that we talked about before. You can't be moved from we talked about the 4 stages of competency in episode 3, I think. But you can't move from 3 to 4 without a lot of time and a lot of repetitions.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I give him some. I think we lost in the finals of our conference tournament that year, and I don't know there's no way if we stay in that style, his beliefs in those first couple of years that we have any success, and then he slowly kind of changed it to where he wanted to get it. But I give him so much credit, and it was such a great example for me, for someone who I really think has such strong beliefs, that he was open to that. And I think I think a lot of new coaches face that, and I love when they are willing to
consider who they have and adapt, right?
Yep.
And I think, and it's different for college. Pros in college is different because you can get your own players in over time. But high school coaches, youth coaches, you get the kids that you get, and to me, it's a moral responsibility to bring the best out of those kids as a coach, right? That's just your job number one. And we'll do a show on values, but his job number one is to get the most out of those kids and develop them the best that you can. And are they going to be NBA players, all of them, or WNBA? No. Yeah. But you want them to be the best they can be. That's on you as a coach to look at them and figure out, oh, this kid is 5'3", but oh my gosh, she can shoot from the outside, she can shoot from the hole, she can drive the lane. Maybe I should use that as opposed to saying you pass to the big guy whatever. But
that's why I want to pick coaches' brains, because I think there is in conversations I've had with coaches, a lot of times I have a thought and I ask them something along those lines, like, and there is sometimes. They were open, but they have to weigh it against certain other factors.
Right.
And I'd love to pick their brains about some of that stuff, because I really think that's where we talked about last week or whatever week, coaching is hard. It's like, and we, from the outside, we're talking about some things that we want coaches to consider and be open and just be reflective in a lot of ways, a lot of what we're talking about, knowing that there are certain things that no one knows that they know, that yes, that kid's, in your example, that kid's really fast, or that kid's, can really drive. But guess what? They don't know the plays. They don't know how to run the plays. And so they can't run certain things. So I think it's that what my message, in this is just like, be open to learning and by no means is it easy to figure all that stuff out. And there are so many different factors, but we're I think the message or what we want, coaches to kind of think about today is just be open to be vulnerable, be open to learning. You'll have a chance to be your best self and bring the best out of your players.
And be a role, right. It's absolutely. I think those are the two big parts of vulnerability / openness, and that is you can't learn unless you're open to learn. And that applies to you as the coach, and applies to your players. And so as a coach, you have a responsibility to yourself to be that way. Your responsibility to everybody around you to be open to learning, because it's such an impediment if you're not open. And then you have to do things to make sure that the players are open and vulnerable. They feel secure. They feel respected. They feel listened to. They feel heard. And then they have then you give them opportunities to succeed. And then you do building blocks, and then they begin to trust you even more, and they're open to more. So you have to work and let them feel comfortable being vulnerable. And just, I know it's the end of the show, but just, I go back to Monty Iwanaga, and he could have handled.
Still can't wait to see that in writing.
A wonderful man. He's passed away, but he was a wonderful man. His legacy is huge in my hometown. But imagine if he had handled that the way a lot of coaches do it. He just shut down, like, no, I don't need your lineup. I got it. I don't know if I'd be who I am today if he'd handled things that way.
Yeah, impact.
So, big impact. So anyway, so thanks for the show today, Nick. I had fun.
Yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed the show today. Thanks for joining us. Greatly appreciated.
We're excited for next week's show when we welcome Denise Dillon, head women's basketball coach at Villanova University. Thanks for joining us for today's show. We want to hear from you with your questions and comments. You can find us at thenickanthonyshow.com and our social media handles, which you can find in our description.